And one of the major problems that we have is that there's no one really in control. There's nobody that can be held accountable. The buck doesn't stop anywhere in particular. If you say, well, the school board, they can be blamed, they can be held accountable for disappointing results. Not really, because they have no control over the amount of their funding. The legislature appropriates money, but they also have far less control over how that money is used than what most people assume. The legislature has this proclivity, they just have a strong tendency to pass laws that don't just say you've got a certain amount, $2 billion or $3 billion to spend, so-called lump sum budgeting, but instead they'll have categorical funding. You've got to use this money on a program that the legislature wants, or earmarking or line item budgeting to where the legislature is functioning like a school board. And then you've got the governor who has the responsibility to make sure we don't spend more money than what we're going to have to pay the bills. And if governors would simply restrict spending when that's necessary, if they would do it just in a lump sum way, say to the school board, you've got $200 million less than what you thought you had. And Governor Lingo's been doing that
Trying to
lately.
do that, yeah.
But we have a long, long history in Hawaii of governors saying, well, I'm not going to give you the money for this program, I'm going to give you all the money that I can give you for that program. And so there are times when the governor in Hawaii has functioned like a school board. The legislature is constantly functioning like a school board. The school board over here very correctly says you really can't hold us accountable for the results or lack thereof, because it's like there are three parties that have their hands on the steering wheel and the vehicle doesn't get where it's supposed to go. You can't blame any one of them because there are two others over there that control that steering wheel as well. Rod McPhee, who was the president of Punahou, and before that the superintendent of a public education system on the mainland, he said when everyone's in control, no one's in control.
That's right.
And I think that's just a really glaring problem. It prevents us from having accountability. The other thing, we have by far the single most centralized top-down governance system anywhere. And so our principals, for example, they have relatively little control over their own budget. They actually control 47%, and experts from outside Hawaii say if you give a principal control over 47%, that's basically enough just to open the doors, just to have a school. That it's that other half, if you will, that really define what that school's all about. But the problem with the principal, they don't control enough of their budget. That's part of it. It can take years for them to remove a teacher from a classroom if they're convinced for whatever reason it's just not working. These kids in this classroom are not learning. Because of union work rules, they can't just remove that teacher, have him or her do something else. They have to go through a painstaking process. It can literally take years, and then typically that teacher is just sent to another school where sometimes the process begins again. So principals don't really have control over what's going on in the classroom to the extent that most people assume, and in most places they do. They don't have the degree of control over the funding that they should, and in most places they do. And you've also got a problem, I think, with the way we go about hiring principals. Imagine if you can, if you and I had this very large, complicated organization where we think leadership is really important, leadership is essential, and we were interviewing somebody for the job, and that person said, first of all, I want total job security. No matter how much the teachers are complaining, the parents are complaining, the students aren't learning, I don't want that to have any impact whatsoever on not just me being a principal, but me being a principal in this particular school. That's what the union contract calls for. Secondly, if that person said, and I don't want my compensation and my benefits affected in any way, whether those students are failing or failing tremendously, the community is up in arms, they think I'm doing a lousy job, I want my compensation, my benefits to be unaffected by the job that I'm doing. I want my job security to be absolute. Well, how do you hold accountable? Even if that person had control of the budget and control of the classrooms and could really exercise leadership on that community, with that sort of union contract, how do you really hold them accountable? And even if we were to give control of the budget to the principals and control of who's in the classroom and that sort of thing, you can't just turn billions of dollars over to the principals and not provide support and oversight. Now, all the support and oversight is coming from central administration. There's no way that our school board can even know the principals or find the schools, much less provide meaningful support and oversight in the running of individual schools. So it just makes so much sense to go from being the single most centralized top-down system to turning that upside down to where control over the funding is given to the principals, where they have performance contracts. Now, they're supposed to have performance contracts now, but they don't because the union rules prohibit it. But if they sat down with a local school board or a local school council, we have those right now, if there was some group that was close enough to provide meaningful support and oversight, yet not so close as to have their own conflicts of interest, you could have a process of hiring someone where you agree upon what are the performance indicators. How are we going to know if this is working or not? If we need to know whether children are improving, let's test them at the beginning of the year what their reading level is, test them at the end of the year, and whether they make proficiency or not isn't the big thing. If they're showing improvement, more than a year's improvement during a year's period of time, if we decide that's what we're after, improvement, then that's major.
What's your measure, right?
If we want the parents to be excited about the opportunity for their children, if surveys of parents and how they feel about that school are important, let's put that in the performance contract. The teachers, if we want the teachers to feel like if they've got a discipline issue, the principal's going to back them up. The teachers who feel that there's fairness in that school community, that if there's a teacher who's not doing a good job, that if he or she is removed from the classroom, it's for a good reason. If you've got those kinds of surveys, satisfaction surveys, and you've got the hard data in terms of how the kids are actually doing, then a performance contract has great significance. If I'm the principal, it's fair to me because now I know how I'm going to be held accountable, how you're going to determine whether I'm doing the job or not. And it's not like you're trying to set me up for failure. You, the school board, you want me to succeed. You're going to be there to support me. But if it's not working, then that performance contract gives us a mechanism for saying this isn't working and we make a change. Because the whole idea here is you've got to put the kids first. The system right now, this top-down centralized system where no one's really in control, you look every time push comes to shove, the kids get thrown under the bus. Every time it's a question of what the adults want and the kids need, the adult wants win every single time.